Students, this topic is about the loss of biodiversity and what are the consequences of these biodiversity and including the animals and the plants which affects the ecosystem. So we will see how to control and what are the remedies to control these biodiversity based losses in our nature. So as you can see here, so biodiversity is basically the loss which includes the extinction of species worldwide as well as the local reduction or loss of species in a certain habitat, resulting in a loss of biological diversity. So as you can see here in this picture, it's a map of India showing the Himalayan species which are being lost and losing the green cover. So the changing pattern can be seen with respect to the indicators which is being shown here. So the gain of forest is being shown with this green color, loss of forest with this brown shade, and when there are no changes, those reasons they are being remarked as with respect to this red color. So as you can see here, the majority of the land and the forest areas, they are being showing the losses with respect to the forest. So when we are very much well aware that when there is loss of forest, there are basically the losses of the plants or animals which are inhabiting those particular places, and it ultimately leads to the biodiversity losses. Let's see what are the informations which are being shared in your books. So while it's doubtful if any new species are being added through speciation, that is a natural phenomenon which occurs in our nature, into the earth's treasury of the species, there is no doubt about their continuing losses. So, the biological wealth of our planet has been declining rapidly, and the accusing finger is clearly pointing to the human activities. So, whatever activities we are doing, it ultimately leads to the biological or the species loss in our planet. It may include the global warming or the pollution and several related aspects. Even the overpopulation is also the causative factor. So the colonization of the tropical Pacific islands by the humans is said to have led to the extinction, that is approximately around 2000 species of the native birds uh, in the tropical Pacific islands. So the IUCN Red Data Book information which or the documents which shows that the extinction of 784 species including the 338 vertebrates, 359 invertebrates and 87 plants in the last 500 years. So some examples of the recent extinction includes the dodo, which is a bird from the Mauritius, quagga from the Africa, Thylacine from the Australia, Stellar sea cow from the Russia, and three subspecies, that is from the Bali, Javan and Caspian of the tiger species. So the last 20 years alone have witnessed the disappearance of the 27 species. So the careful analysis of the records shows that the extinction across the taxa are not random. Some groups like amphibian appears to be more vulnerable to the extinction. So adding to the grim scenario of the extinctions is the fact that more than 15,500 species worldwide are facing the threat of extinction, and presently about 12% of all bird species, 23% of all mammal species, and 32% of all amphibian species, and 31% of all gymnosperm species in the world face the threat of extinction. So, from the study of the history of life on the earth through fossil records, we learn that large scale losses of the species like the one we are currently witnessing have also happened earlier and even before human appeared on the scene. So during the long period, that is more than the 3 billion years since the origin and diversification of life on the earth, there were 5 episodes of mass extinction of the species, and how the sixth extinction presently is in progress different from the previous episodes. So the difference is in the rate. The current species extinction rates are estimated to be 100 to 1000 times faster. See, see the speedy rate of this extinction. So it is faster than in the pre-human times, and our activities are responsible for the faster rates. So ecologists, they warn that if the present trends continue, nearly half of all the species on the earth might be wiped off within the next 100 years. So, in general, loss of biodiversity in a region may lead to a decline in plant production, lowered resistance to the environmental perturbances such as the drought, and increased variability in certain ecosystem processes, and which are basically the plant productivity, water use, and pest and disease cycles. So, the causes of biodiversity losses, that is the accelerated rates of species extinction that the world is facing now, are largely due to human activities, and there are four major causes which are known as evil quadrants. So you need to pay focus on this evil quadrant, which is a sobriquet used to describe them. So first one is habitat loss and fragmentation. This is the most important cause driving animals and plants to extinction, and the most dramatic examples of habitat loss come from the tropical rainforest. So these points you need to keep in your mind. Once the covering more than 14% of the earth's land surface, these rainforests now cover no more than 6%. So see the declining rate from 14 to 6. They are being destroyed fast. By the time you finish reading this chapter, 1000 more hectares of rainforest would have been lost. So the Amazon rainforest, it is so huge that it is called the lungs of the planet, harboring probably millions of the species, is being cut and cleared for cultivating soya beans or for conservation of grasslands for raising the beef cattle. So besides total loss, the degradation of many habitats by pollution also threatens the survival of the many species. When large human you can say when large habitats are broken up into small fragments due to various human activities, mammals, birds requiring large territories, and certain animals with migratory habitats are badly affected, leading to the population declines. So the next factor which is included in the evil quadrant is the over exploitation. So humans have always depended on nature for the food and shelter, but when we need turns to greed, it leads to over exploitation of the natural resources. So many species extinctions in the last 500 years, that is including the stellar sea cow, passenger pigeon, were due to over exploitation by humans. So presently many marine fishes population around the world are over harvested, endangering the continued existence of some commercially important species. The third evil factor is alien species invasions. So when alien species, that is the unknown species, are introduced unintentionally or deliberately for whatever purpose, some of them they turn invasive and cause decline or extinction of the indigenous species. So let's take the example. The Nile perch introduced into the Lake Victoria in East Africa led eventually to the die extinction of an ecologically unique organism, that is more than 200 species of the cichlid fish in the lake. So you must be familiar with the environmental damage caused and threat posed to our native species by invasive weed species like carrot grass, which is also known as Congress grass or Parthenium, lantana, and water hyacinth, Eichhornia. These are very common to the Indian context. The recent illegal introduction of the African catfish, that is Calaris garipinus, for aquaculture purpose, is posing threat to the indigenous catfishes in our rivers. So it is an example for the animal species, and these were the examples for the plant species. So you need to keep the examples in your mind. And the last one is coexistence. So when a species becomes extinct, the plant and animal species associated with it in an obligatory way also becomes extinct. So when a host fish species becomes extinct, its unique assemblage of the parasite also meets the same fate. Another example in this case is co-evolved plant pollinator mutualism, where extinction of one invariably leads to the extinction of the other. So let's see how to conserve the biodiversity and why we should conserve the biodiversity. So um, for this conservation, that is why we need to conserve the biodiversity, there are three basic categories of the thoughts which different scientists and the you can say ecologists they have given. So let's see what are these three categories. So first one is narrowly utilitarian arguments. So what is as per these arguments? So the narrow utilitarian arguments for conserving the biodiversity are obvious. Human drive countless direct economic benefits from the nature in the form of food, that is they are intaking the cereals, pulses, foods, firewood, fiber, construction material, industrial products, which may include tannins, lubricant dyes, resins, perfumes, and the products of medical importance. So, more than 25% of the drug currently sold in the market worldwide are derived from the plants, that is from the 25,000 species of the plant which contribute to the traditional medicines used by the native peoples around the world. So nobody knows how many more medically useful plants there are in the tropical rainforest waiting to be explored. With the increase in resources put into the bioprospecting, exploring molecular genetics and the species level diversity for the products of economic importance, nations endowed with rich biodiversity can be expected to reap enormous benefits. So bioprospecting is the exploration of natural resources for small molecules. So this term is actually very much important. So you need to pay attention for this. So, bioprospecting is the exploration of natural resources for small molecules and macromolecules and biochemical and genetic information that could be developed into the commercially valuable products for agricultural, aquaculture, bioremediation, cosmetics, nanotechnology, or pharmaceutical industries. Now, the next, that is the second type of category is broadly utilitarian arguments, which includes that biodiversity plays a major role in many ecosystem services that nature provides. The fast dwindling Amazon forest is estimated to produce um, most of the biological species. The photosynthesis is 20% of the total oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. So, can we put an economic value on a service by the nature? So, pollination, without which the plants cannot give us the fruit or seeds, is another service that ecosystem provide to the nature. So nature's pollinator layers, or either it could be the bees, bumblebees, birds and bats, they add another intangible benefit that we derive from the nature. So the aesthetic pleasures of walking through the thick woods, watching spring flowers in full bloom, all walking up to a will was a song in the morning, can we can't put a price tag on such things. So nature, it ultimately gives lot of immense and valuable things which are beyond any price. Let's see the third concept, that is the third type of category, which includes the ethical arguments. So these ethical arguments are due to the value systems of most of the religious or philosophers and the cultures. So we need to realize that every species has an intrinsic value, even if we are not able to carry those current or if the plant is not having any economic value to us. So we have a moral duty to care for their well-being and pass on our biological legacy in good order to the future generations. So the ethical arguments for conservation of biodiversities are as follows: all the species are independent, as the loss of one species may have for reaching consequence for other members of the community. Now the very important and relevant topic is, how do we conserve our biodiversity? So there are basically the two methods which are given in your book, that is in situ conservation method and ex situ conservation method. So when we conserve and protect the whole ecosystem, its biodiversity at all levels is protected. We save the entire forest to save the tiger. This approach is basically in situ conservation. However, when there are situations where animal or plant is endangered or threatened, facing a very high risk for the extinction in the wild in the near future, and needs the urgent measures to save it from the extinction, then ex situ method of conservation is desirable approach for such things. So let's see what are the basics involved in this. So in situ conservation, basically it means the conservation of ecosystems and natural habitats, and the maintenance and recovery of viable population of the species in their natural surroundings, and in case of the domesticates or cultivated species, in the surroundings where they have developed their distinctive properties. And let's see the different examples which is given in your book. So most of um, us, they can categorize on a global basis that the problem has been addressed by the eminent conservationists. They identified for maximum protection on certain biodiversity hotspot regions where high levels of species richness and high degree of endemism, that is the species confined to that region and not found anywhere else. So initially 25 biodiversity hotspots were identified, but subsequently 9 have been added to the list, and bringing the total number of biodiversity hotspots in the world to about 34. So these hotspots are also the regions of accelerated habitat loss. So 3 of these hotspots which are in connection to the Indian context is Western Ghats and Sri Lanka. Indo-Burma and Himalayan cover of our country is exceptionally high biodiversity regions, and although all the biodiversity hotspots put together cover less than 2% of the earth's land area, so the number of species they collectively harbor is extremely high, and strict protection of these hotspots could reduce the ongoing mass extinction by almost 30%. So in India, ecologically unique and biodiversity rich regions are legally protected as biosphere reserves, national parks, and sanctuaries. India has 14 biosphere reserves, 19 national parks, 448 wildlife sanctuaries. So, India has also a history of religious and cultural, you can say, traditions that emphasized protection of the nature, In many cultures, tracts of forest were set aside and all the trees and wildlife within were venerated and even given total protection. So, such sacred groves are found in the Khasi and Jantia hills in the Meghalaya, Aravali hills of the Rajasthan, Western Ghat regions of the Karnataka and Maharashtra, and in the Sarguja, Chanda, and Vatsar areas of the Madhya Pradesh. So, in Meghalaya, the sacred groves are the la- last refuge for a large number of the rare and threatened plants. Let's see the ex situ conservation. So, ex situ conservation literally means off site conservation. It is the process of protecting an endangered species variety of breed of plants or animals outside its natural habitat, for example, by removing part of the population from a threatened habitat and placing it in a new location where it may be a wild area or within the care of the humans. So, the degree to which human controls or modify the natural dynamics of the managed population varies widely, and this may include alternation of living environments, reproductive patterns, access to resources, and protection from the predation and mortality. So, ex situ management can occur within or outside the species' natural geographical range. So, individuals maintain ex situ exist outside an ecological niche. So, this means that they are not under the same selection pressures as wild population, and they may undergo artificial selection if maintained ex situ for multiple generations. So, agricultural biodiversity is also conserved in ex situ collection. So, this is the primarily in the form of gene banks where the samples are stored in order to conserve the genetic resources of the major crops and their wild relatives. And the information which is given in this connection in your book is that in this approach the threatened animals and plants are taken out from their natural habitat and placed in a special settings where they can be protected and given special care. So, zoological parks, botanical gardens, wildlife safari parks serves this process. So, they are ex situ conservation modes. There are basically many animals that have been extinct in the wild but continue to be maintained in zoological parks. So, in recent years, ex situ conservation has advanced beyond keeping threatened species in the enclosures. Now, gametes of threatened species can be preserved in viable and fertile condition for long periods by using cryopreservation techniques. Eggs can be fertilized in the in vitro form, excuse me, and plants can be propagated using tissue culture methods. So, seeds of different genetic strains of commercially important plants can be kept for a long period in seed banks. Biodiversity basically knows no political boundaries, and its conservation therefore is a collective responsibility of all nations. So, the history convention of the biological diversity, that is the Earth Summit, held in Rio de Janeiro in the year 1992, called upon all nations to take appropriate measures for the conservation of biodiversity and sustainable utilization of its benefit. In a follow up, a World Summit on Sustainable Development held in 2002 in the Johannesburg, South Africa, 190 countries pledged their commitment to achieve by 2010 a significant reduction in the current rate of biodiversity loss at global, regional, and local levels. So, this was all about the concept of biological diversity loss and why we need to protect our biodiversity and how we need to protect this. Thank you.